No Monty Python cannot understand. Indeed. Okay, so today is our 10th lecture. I hope everybody got the notice last time. Got stuck with an empty. Wait, I don't see the English speakers. You speak Hebrew?
No.
No? Okay, so we'll keep it in English, but yeah, I'm sorry about last time. I hope you got the notice not too late. Today, the lecture will be divided in two parts. One which will be a bit more heavy, a bit more theoretical. We're going to finish what we started about object-oriented stuff. And the second part will be a bit more entertaining. So let's summarize what we've done so far. And this is also to remind you what you need to be familiar with in the exam. I will talk about the exam in a minute. So this is what we've done. And this is what is left to do in the two more lectures that we have. I might record an additional lecture about testing for you guys, a short one, which will not be part of the exam. But this is what I wanted to do last time. There is a package called PyTest, which actually one of my research students originally told me about. It's an amazing framework for testing your code. You might be familiar with the unit test library. Have you heard about it? So the unit test library is part of the standard library. You remember we talked about the modules that are part of the standard library and the ones that need to be installed in addition to those modules. So there is a framework for testing your code in Python, which is part of the standard library, which is called unit test. And there is a much more user-friendly framework for testing code that is called PyTest, which you need to install independently, and it's very useful. You can have a directory with many tests that you run. If you have codes that is starting to become big, like the code that we work with in my group is several thousands of lines, so it's very useful to have a bunch of tests that run and tell you exactly where the code is failed. So I may record a short intro on PyTest, but today and next time, these are the subjects that we will cover. So today we're going to do a bit more of object-oriented things. This is, I told you, the part of the lecture which will be more serious. And then I will give you an example of a specialized library. Remember I told you that in Python opened this ability for many scientific communities to build their own code and to... אתה יכול לשבת כי נראה לי שאתה מסתיר לחצי מהרב. תודה. אז... what am I saying? Yes. I told you that Python made it possible for many scientific communities to develop their own libraries and to make them shareable by all their colleagues. So I'm going to give a few examples. And I'm going to give you some examples of how to do web scraping. Do you know what web scraping is? So web scraping is when you want to collect data from websites, to extract the data, to parse this data, to reuse this data. So I'm going to show you two libraries that are very useful for web scraping. And if you want to do website design with Python, this is going to be very useful for you. And next time we will do a study case. We'll talk about machine learning libraries for Python, and we will try on a few examples. So this will be next time. Before we dive into this, I'm going to do a short parenthesis, and we're going to talk a minute about how ChatGPT is changing the way we program and teach programming and learn how to program. So I've had a lot of discussions with my research. We've started the discussion with the research students. We're having this ongoing discussion among colleagues in the community, like the scientific community. How is ChatGPT going to change the way we program? Is it going to affect it at all? So we're going to have like a 5-minute session now where I want you guys to be able to talk to share your thoughts. Who didn't try it? Okay, so I see that.
Programming or in the
No, who didn't try ChatGPT? Okay, so I see that most of you guys have tried it already. Can I ask, what did you try it for? Are you addicted already? Not yet? Ken,
I asked it to write poems.
a
And to
poem?
write about poems of רחל המשוררת.
Okay,
And it invented poems of רחל המשוררת. And they
okay.
were absolutely bad.
It was bad.
It was
Okay, so you had the experience of it doing a bad work. Other?
You have to be very with a criticized mind when you use it, because sometimes it answers with great confidence.
Okay, this
Yes,
is
he
true.
lied. He invented the poem, and said it was real poem when he took it. The
Okay, so it's more confident that it should be. Okay, this is one thing. But you're saying only the negative things.
Oh, it saves a lot of time also. I used it to create scripts for my research. It was very
For the homework?
no, for
No,
my
I'm
research.
kidding, I'm kidding.
It was very, very nice.
Okay.
Very good.
Other experience?
For me, it helped me to. I asked GPT some questions about syntax and how to do methods. And all
Okay,
that
so
stuff.
you did use it for as a tool for programming.
Yes.
Okay.
I asked it how does she walk or he walk? איך אני אסביר את זה? שאלתי אותו איך הוא עובד ולמה הוא דווקא מוגבל ל-2021 ולא מעבר.
Okay.
סתם עניין אותי כאילו למה דווקא הוא מוגבל וגם לקוד
Okay. Okay, so I think I also played with it. In some cases, it pretty blew my mind. Okay, editing stuff, and it's pretty impressive. I think I agree with you that it's more confident than it should be. I tried to ask it the angular separation between 2 points. For it's like the bread and the butter of what we're doing in astrophysics, and it was wrong, and it was super confident. So you're right, and I think it can. I think in the same way that Stack Overflow. You remember that I told you in the beginning of the course that one ability that you should develop is the ability to ask Google the right questions and get answers from Stack Overflow, etc. So I think it's going to do a similar. It can be used in a similar way. It can be much more specific than Stack Overflow, and I think also we should really see it as a tool that helps us in the same way that Stack Overflow helps us. Okay, we're not supposed to know everything about everything in Python. I think it's slightly more tempting though to use it more, because at the end Stack Overflow only shows you answers to other people and questions of other people, and here you can really make it very specific. Okay, so I tried to think about a few examples in which I think it could really help us and you in your programming journey. Okay, and I also tried to think about cases where I think you should be very careful about using it wisely. And I should say that this for me is an ongoing thought. Okay, so things where I think it could help you. You can really use it as a tool to learn. Okay, you can ask it, what is this command doing? I will show you in a second. I just tried to ask him what is the assert command is doing, and while Google will answer you like a few sentences, this gives you examples. It's pretty impressive, okay? It can be a nice teacher for basic things. I asked it what's the difference between command X and command Y. It's pretty good at answering this too. You can give it a piece of code and ask how to improve it, but here, red lights, which I will talk about in a second. I heard one student telling me that there was a small piece of code that he couldn't remember that was written by someone else. I don't know if you experience how hard it can be to read code that someone else wrote, and also to read code that you wrote 1 month ago. It's like, wow, who wrote this? So you can give it a small code and ask, what is this code doing? Okay, these are things that Stack Overflow can't really do for you, some of them, okay? And it can save you time as a developer. If you have code written by a colleague in MATLAB which you want to convert in Python, as a PhD student I spent hours and hours and hours translating code from MATLAB to Python because my supervisor was a MATLAB person. So it can save you time, it can help you in this. You can generate dummy data if you need to test your code. So I made a CSV file for you guys because I wanted to show you how pandas was working. So I could have asked ChatGPT to generate this data, okay? You can use it to generate unit tests, what I just mentioned, test commands for certain bits of code. Okay, so this is an example where I asked it, tell me about the assert command. Okay, and it gave many examples. I think it can be really helpful when in the learning process. Okay, so places where I think you should be really careful. It's doing mistakes and it's very confident. So this is like a bad combo, okay? The mistake, we can always think that maybe with time it will do less and less mistakes, maybe. We don't know, probably. But in any case, as Ariel said, it should really not be a replacement for your critical and independent thought. So you should always check that you agree and understand the answers. Okay, and I think you could do the same mistake with Stack Overflow, right? You could just copy paste from Stack Overflow, but at the end, if you just copy paste things you don't understand, at some point it's not going to be specific enough to your specific case, and the only thing really that makes you a valuable researcher is your ability to think in a critical way, right? This I also find important. I like seeing in Stack Overflow other people asking questions. It can inspire you when you see answers on forums. It can inspire you to adopt other people's solutions, right? Here, it's going to try to give an answer which is very specific to your specific question. I also see it as something that is less interesting than Stack Overflow. And this, most importantly, maybe, you will not have ChatGPT at your job interview or your exam or the top of the mountain where you have a laptop but no Wi-Fi. Okay, so use it wisely, or it will make you less skillful. And if you use it wisely, I think it can be really good for learning in the learning process. So this brings me to a few words on the exam. I told you that it's going to be pen and paper, okay? So you're going to have access to all your notes, but if you don't know already most of what's there, you're not going to have time to solve the exam. So the notes should be there really just to double check things, not to like open them, and okay, you should not rely on your notes. You will have them available for like small, making sure double checking syntax, but you should really not rely on it because you're not going to have time to solve the questions if you rely on it. And there will also be a question that we will show you an existing code, and you will have to explain what it's doing wrong, what it's doing okay, we're going to also check that you understand an existing code, okay?
So the exam is not write the code for 0.
Part of it will be writing functions and things from 0 with a pen and the paper.
So
There will be one part where we will show you some code and you will have to reflect on it. This will be one part of it. Most of the exam will be writing code and writing it with a paper and a pen.
There's no limit in the notebook that we can.
Sorry?
There is no limit in the notebook that we can.
Yeah, it's just no digital stuff. You can bring your Python, the physics library of Python books, but it's just, okay, it's like everything. You're not going to have time to use it if it's more than just double checking.
כמה שאלות כמה שאלות המבחן?
אני עוד לא, I don't know for sure yet, so I'd rather not tell you, but it will be very solvable. No, I don't think there will be any surprise if you've done the homework. If you haven't used ChatGPT to solve the homework, then you should really be good, okay? Okay. Okay, so now to our first subject. Today we spoke 2 weeks ago about object-oriented programming, about classes. And today we're going to talk about inheritance. I know that some of you already did some inheritance at the tutorial today, but we're going to speak about it now. This is a quick reminder about what we said already about object-oriented coding. I told you about attributes and methods, about the difference between a class and an object, okay, where the class is the blueprint for something and it doesn't exist until you call it, you instantiate it, and the object is actually an instance of a class, so it's comparable to the blueprint of a house and the actual house, okay? So this is what we talked about last time. And today we're going to talk about subclasses and superclasses and inheritance. So I will first show you a few slides and then we will go into examples and make some examples today together, and you can open your computer in the second part. So what is a subclass? Here I'm giving an example. We can really think about it as like categories and subcategories, okay? So here we have a class which is a vehicle, okay? And under this class we have many different types of vehicles. So the subclass is basically defined as a class that has all the methods and all the attributes that the mother class has, but it's more specific, okay? It has some additional method and some additional attributes, but it inherits from all the properties of the parent class. Okay, and the superclass is the parent class. It's the class that is used as the base definition of the subclass. Okay, so all the members of this line, they share the fact that they all belong to the category of the vehicles. Okay, and they all have their own specificity. Okay, so it's a very simple idea. And when you're looking at your code critically and trying to structure it in a structure of classes and subclasses, you should always look for objects that share some properties. Okay, if you have 5 objects in your code that all share a specific property, it probably means that you should make them sub-objects of a superclass. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. So here we have 3 classes: rectangle, square, and circle. And you see that in each of these classes, the programmer defined the color and a method that calculates the area. Okay? So the things here that are surrounded in red are things that these objects share. Okay, they share this property. So the moment you have all these objects that share something, it should turn on a red light that there is room for a superclass. And here the superclass is the shape. Okay, so all these things share properties of a shape. And so here, I'm not going to bring you into the gory details of how this was written, but this is what I just showed you in the previous slide. It was restructured in a way that we have a class called shape, okay, where one of the properties is the color, okay? And then square, rectangle, and circles are subclasses. How do we see that there are subclasses? You see that here, in the parentheses, we have the name of the parent class, okay? And this means that they will inherit all the properties of shape. So in this case, it's just the origin and the color, okay? They will inherit this property, and then they will have their own specific properties too, okay? So it's pretty simple, and we're going to look now at, it's a very simple idea, but it can very easily become a bit more complicated. So I'm going to share my screen now and show you some examples. And if you want to open your computer and do it at the same time, I think it can help you understand. So okay, let's do it. Deleting. What's going on here? Okay, so I remember that we need to change the font, right? Where is the font?
Third one.
Right there.
In the editor? Font. Good. 24. Okay. Okay, and to illustrate the topic of inheritance, I'm using a class called employee, and I do this from a tutorial by a guy called Corey Schaffer, of whom I really like his tutorial. I will post it. I will post a link to his tutorials in the Moodle. I think they're really good. Okay, so what do we have here? We have a class which we called employee. Okay, and we have this init section here, where, if you remember, we defined all the attributes of the object employee. Okay, so in this case we have the first name, the last name, the email address is going to be a combination of the first name and the last name, okay? And we also have the pay, how much this employee is earning, okay? And then we have two methods here. One which is a full name, so it's returning the full name of the employee. And we have another method which is called apply rise, which is basically updating the pay of the employee. And in order to update the pay, it's using the class variable. You remember we talked last time about the difference between class variables and instance variable? Remember? So we said maybe you can remind me the difference. What's the difference between an instance variable and a class variable?
Class is for all the objects. An instance is for specific.
Right. So the instance variable is going to act only on one specific instance of a class, whereas the class variable allows us to change a variable for all the instances. Okay. So this is the class which I'm going to start with, and let's give an example. So I have employee 1, which is called give me his name. Shula Cohen. Okay, and how much does she earn? Come on.
20K.
20K. Okay, and so I want to print her email address. Employee 1. Okay, let's run this. And indeed, it's printing shula.cohen@email.com. Okay? Now, so this is just a summary of what we did last time. Okay? Now, let's assume that in our company, we want to differentiate the general employee and some more specific employees. Okay? For example, managers and developers. Okay? And this is exactly the kind of cases where we would want to define subclasses. Why? Because managers and developers and cleaning personnel and I don't know, strategy advisors, they all share the properties of employees. Okay? But they may have some more specific properties too. Okay? So I'm going to define now a new class which is called developer. I can give you a minute if you want to copy this, okay, so that we continue from here. Let me know when you're done.
apply raise, עשית את זה סלף כתשלום המקורי כפול העלה.
כן, let's try it, okay, while you're copying. So I want to show the raise of Shula, and then I want to apply a raise to Shula, and then I will print her pay again. Print employee 1 pay. Okay. Okay, so she was first earning 20K, and then after the raise, she was earning 20,800.
אז עובד לפי אחוזים, כאילו לפי...
כן, פשוט כי ככה הגדרנו את זה. פה זה העלאה של 4%. אוקיי? אוקיי.
אבל אם הייתי רוצה להגדיר את זה בצורה של... קיבלה כאילו העלאה של 1,000 שקל בחודש.
אז פה היית כותב self-pay plus 1,000. זה פשוט תלוי איך אתה מגדיר. Okay, so let's now assume that I want to create the class of developers. Okay, so I'm going to create a new class. Okay, and I don't want to copy all the properties of the parent class. So I'm going to define developer, and here in the parentheses I will write the employee class. And what this means is that developer is a subclass of employee. Okay? Now, to start with, I want to show you that even without writing any code, okay, even without doing anything in the subclass, the developer is inheriting of all the properties of the parent class. So let's make an example. I have developer 1, which is a developer called Yehoshaphat. Levi, okay, and I want to print developer 1 full name. Okay, his name is Yehoshaphat Levi. Okay, so you see that, and here I didn't write any code. Just by making the structure of a parent class and a subclass, the developer inherited of all the properties of the parent class. Now, of course, this is not how I'm going to use it. I'm going to add some specificities, but this is just to start with. כן.
כשעשיתי את הסלף-פיי, למה עשית את זה גם אינט?
אינט? אינטג'ר.
כן, אבל למה עשית את זה?
סתם רציתי שזה יהיה עגול.
אוקיי.
זה פחות צריך להעסיק אתכם מאשר הצורה שאני מחשבת את השכר החדש. The way I'm calculating the pay should be less critical to you than the actual structure of things, okay?
וגם הם דיברו אמרו לנו כאילו לעשות סופר. אמרו לנו לעשות...
לאט לאט. עוד מעט אני אגיע לזה. לא כולם עשו את הטוטוריאל. אז בסדר? עוד מעט אני אגיע לסופר. Okay, so now let's assume that I've decided that developers should have a higher raise than just employees. Okay, this is to give you motivation to do your Python homework. Okay, so I'm going to define a new raise amount. Okay, I remind you that raise amount was this class variable here. Okay, do you see my cursor, the cursor? When I say here, you see? Okay. Okay, so I want to give developers a 50% raise. Okay? Now let's see what happens to Yehoshaphat, our friend. I'm going to apply the raise to Yehoshaphat. Apply raise, print developer 1 pay. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm printing his pay before and after the raise. Okay, let's see what happens. Wow, you went from 20K to 30K. Okay? Good. But I want to show you what happens if I make him an employee. Okay, then he's back to the previous state. So the point here is to show you that I can modify the value of a class variable for a subclass. Okay, and then it will apply. It's still a class variable, so it will apply to all instances of the subclass, but only to the instances of the subclass and not the parent class. Okay? Everybody understood?
No, can you repeat?
Yes. So if Yehoshaphat was defined as an employee, okay, here his pay rise is 4%. Okay? The moment I define him as a developer, he's getting a 50% raise. What does it mean? That here, the developer, he inherited of all the properties of the employee. He has a full name, he has a first name, a last name, a pay, etc. But I was able to modify the value of this class variable only for the instances of the subclass. So only the people who are not only employee but also developer will have this class associated with them.
So when you used employee, so it took the raise amount of
Yes,
Of
if
the-
I
the
make
upper-
Yoshafat an employee, it will use raise amount of 4%. If I make him a developer, it will use this specific raise amount. Okay? Okay, now there is one thing that I discovered while preparing this course, which I think is really cool. Let me see if I wrote it. One second. And maybe I didn't write it. One second. Ah, yes. This is really cool. So you can use the help. You remember that I showed you the help function a long time ago, I think in this first or second lecture. I showed you that if you use help on an object, it will give you all the attributes of the object. So if you use help, and by the way, PyCharm is telling you that this is a class that is inheriting from a superclass. So this is interesting. But if you use help on a subclass, okay, it will give you the entire chain that Peyton goes through when looking for a certain attribute. I'll show you in a second. So let's do it. Okay. Okay, so what happened when I do help developer? It prints, it's telling me that developer is a class, and it's printing here what is called the method resolution order. Okay, what does it mean? It shows me the chain of steps that Python will go through when applying a method. Okay, so in our case, we applied the method raise amount to give an employee a pay rise. Okay, so at first it went and looked in the developer class to see if he can find it there, and then he went to employee, and then he went to this more general built-in objects, which are basically the underlying Python objects. Okay, and here it's giving me all kinds of details on the subclass, and it's telling me here what are the methods that were inherited from the superclass. Okay, so it's really giving me the entire structure of the subclass inheriting from the superclass. So, and here it can look very simple, but when you have a lot of code and many layers of subclasses, and it's becoming very intricate, this help command can be very useful in understanding what's going on. Okay, so this was something that I wanted to show you. Okay, now let's assume what I've showed you here is how to update a class parameter. Okay, so it was a variable that already existed in the parent class, and I wanted to change it, right? The raise amount, it already existed in the employee class, and I just wanted to modify it. Now I want to show you how about if I want to add some specificities to the developer. Okay, if I want to be more specific, in the same way that we had the difference between shape and some subcategories, or the vehicles and which vehicle we are talking about. So here too I want to be more specific, and in the case of of developers, I want to add attributes. Okay, so how would I do this? What do I need to do when I want to define the attributes of a class? What's the first def that appears in the class? Init. Okay, so if I want to add to the developer some specific attributes, what do I need to do? I need to create a specific init function for the developer, right? So let's do it. Where did I put it? One second. Okay, these are the which developer which we just talked about. Okay, so I want to build a new class. which is a class of skilled developers. Okay? And in this case, so this is a new class, I want to be more specific and to add an attribute which is the programming language that the developer is specializing in. Okay? So how would I do it? I would do a def init. Okay. And here I still want the developer, the skilled developer. I still want it to have all the attributes that the parent class had, right? So I want it to have a first name.
מעיין, we have to put it there?
1 second. I will show you exactly where you don't have to put it. Okay? Last name, pay, and programming languages. Okay? Now, I don't want to copy here. I could copy paste here all the attributes of the parent class and add one, but remember we want to make our code dry. We don't want to write things twice. So here exactly is where the super words will come to the picture. So I'm going to write it and then I'm going to explain. Sorry, super dot init. And here, okay, and then self dot prog lang equal prog lang. Okay, so what did I do here? I made a new init function for the skilled developer, and this line here, the super.init, this is what it's telling me is that these properties here, the first name, the last name, the pay, take them from the super class. Okay, how does it know which one is the super class? Because the super class is here. Okay, so this is telling me take these for free. You're getting all this code for free. You don't have to rewrite it. Take this code from the superclass and then add a specific feature to this object, which is the programming language. So, כן.
מקודם יצרת סאב קלאס שלא היה בו כלום, כאילו עשית בו קלאס ולא היה בו שום דבר, ובכל זאת כל הדברים בסופר קלאס עדיין היו שם ועבדו. אז למה אנחנו בכלל צריכים לעשות את הסופר, אם ככה? לא הבנתי.
אם אנחנו כותבים את זה, אוקיי? ברגע שאנחנו כותבים את זה, אנחנו צריכים להסביר מאיפה זה צץ.
יוסיף שם פרוגרם.
I'm wondering what would happen if we didn't write these three. We can try it. And then we would probably not have to use these. But I think the moment, okay, I think the point here is that the moment you define an init function, you're kind of redefining the attributes for the objects. Okay? So if I want to add properties, I have to write an init function. And I think Python expects you to write all the attributes in the init function. Okay? But what you don't want to do is to have to go again into all the details of where these attributes came from. So you're using this in order to save, to avoid having to rewrite it.
וזה נקרא סופר כי כאילו זה אומר סופר קלאס?
כן. Okay, so let's make Shula a skilled and rich developer. Okay, so employee 3, she's going to be a skilled developer, and she knows how to program in Python. Okay, and now I want to print employee 3 first name. Okay, so her name is Shula, and she knows she has this additional attribute she can program in Python. Okay, so these are the basics of inheritance. All the rest is building upon these two ideas. Okay, of on the one hand inheriting from all the properties of the parent class, and on the other hand making it more specific with its own class variables and its own attributes. Okay, these are the two basics idea. Yes.
Can we start initialize Shula as an employee and then like cast her to be a skilled programmer, a skilled developer?
You want to give her a promotion?
Yeah.
Yes, you could. You could make Shula. Well, first, here it will complain. Okay, it will tell you. It will ask you. It will tell you that prog language is not part of the. Okay, so you could add it manually. Prog. Okay, and you can also make her just write this. You're asking, would there be a way? I'm wondering if this would do it. Let's try it. No, it didn't like it. Okay, so the way to do it here would be to rewrite that. Okay. I'm trying to think if there would be an easy way to just like give the employee as an argument and tell it to elaborate on this, but I'm not sure. I can think about it.
ולעבור מ-skill developer, נניח ל-developer או ל-employee, כאילו, מה-subclass.
מה הכוונה? ברגע, the moment you are a skilled developer, you're also an employee, right? Because the moment you belong to the subclass, you're also part of the superclass. It's a subcategory.
אבל נניח ל-developer יש לו העלאה שונה.
נכון. אז you can redefine him as an employee, or you can manually change his specific raise amount to a lower one. You can also work on the instance itself and like manually change the raise amount. But yes, okay. Okay, good. So this is what I wanted to tell you about regarding inheritance and object-oriented stuff. Now, let's move to our next subject, and we will have a 5-minute break before the next subject because you need it and I need it. Okay, so this we talked about. Okay, so the next subject which I wanted to tell you about is specialized libraries. I now, from now and until the end, okay, until the end of the last lecture, I'm going to show you some specialized libraries which are doing some specific stuff. I think this is one of the strengths of Python. Okay, in no other language that I was exposed to, I could do both astrophysical stuff and web scrapping and all kind of tasks which are so different just because some specific communities develop their own. So So I'm going to give you a few examples, and we're going to do some exercises with these few examples. Okay, so I told you that plenty of communities built their own library and made it open access. Of course, as an astrophysicist, I'm exposed to the astrophysics one. So there is one library called AstroPY. But I know that the biologists have their own libraries, and in the gene industry, there are lots of very specific string mapping libraries, etc. So AstroPY, for example, this is an example from the documentation of AstroPY. It's going to help you do some tasks which are very specific to astrophysicists. So play with the sky coordinates and transform positions of planets and stars on the sky, convert between coordinates. Okay, these are all things that you can write for yourself on Python, but there was a critical enough mass of people who wanted to have a common framework to do it, so that there is a specific library for it. And these are even more examples. So here, for example, there is a facility in AstroPY where you can take a picture which has many colors and separate the pictures into all the different colors that it's made of. Okay, which again you can code for yourself, but hey, smart people have done it too, so why not use it? And this is an example. We have very specific formats in astrophysics, which are called FITS files, and there are very nice tools for handling these formats in AstroPY. So this is an example where in just a few lines you can read this format and make an image, and this would take much longer to code if you had to do it from scratches. So this was just one example. I know that many of you are not doing research in astrophysics, but this was to illustrate how specific can libraries be. And what we will do after the short break is I'm going to show you two libraries which will allow you to extract from and post to the internet. This is on the one hand, and then also parse data that you can extract from the internet. Do you know what I mean by parsing? Okay, so parsing, so you can extract the data, but there is a difference between extracting the data and being able to use it. For example, you can extract PDF pictures from internet, but if you want to actually use the third word of the fifth sentence that's on this PDF, you need some additional facilities so that you can not only get the object from the internet, but also extract the data and reuse the data. Okay, and there are different libraries that do the extraction and the actual parsing. Okay, parsing is making the data usable and playable and manipulatable. Okay, so let's do a 5-minute break. So it's now almost 1. So at 1:05 we'll be back here, and I will show you some examples. Actually, I will give you a short task in these 5 minutes. You need to pip install 2 libraries. It's 2 lines of codes, okay? So you need to do a pip install request. Imri has done it on Windows. He told me that it's super easy. Okay, so one of them is requests. You just do pip install requests. Okay? And the other one is called Beautiful Soup. And the way to spell it is it's Beautiful Soup with 1 L in one word and then 4. Okay, Beautiful Soup 4. And be careful not to install Beautiful Soup without the 4, because it's an old version and it's less good. Okay, so in Mac it's 2 lines of code. In Windows, according to memory, it's also 2 lines of code.
מה צריך להוריד?
request, כותבים את זה כמו request עם S בסוף, ו-beautiful soup 4, שזה, כותבים את זה במילה אחת, עם L אחד.
זה כמו שמורידים נמפאי וכאלה?
כן. בעיקרון פיפ אינסטל ואז את ה...
תבואי מזמנים איתנו? תבואי מזמנים איתנו? למה לא? ואין כל לחם? רגע, תתקשס.
רגע, יש לי לחם.
לא, אתה פה...
אבל מה שחשוב זה גם הפעם. יש לך צריכה ולהוריד כאילו... כן, ברור. כן, אבל יש דין בפייתון. נגיד אני יש פה כאילו בפייתון שלי. נראה לי שהוא כאילו גם נמפאי לא היה לי.
למה רושמים את זה PIP?
אני אישי.
אני הייתי בטוח שאני אקבל כאילו
נתתי 87.
אז זהו, זה מה שציפיתי שאני אקבל, אבל לא.
לכו תדעו כמה נדעו גם העלה
זה גרוע, כי אני לא ידעתי 40
הוא לא העלה. לא, אני יודע ש... אין מגלה שם, נראה שאת לא טוב, כי זאתי יצטה אותי. נראה לי הוא השלים שתמיד עוזר באמת. נכון, נראה לי הוא השלים אותי. לא, אבל אני לא קיבלתי ממנו. נגמר עידן הבן,
עושים מה שיש בהרצאה,
טל מי קיבל 100. אני מניח שזה טל.
שני אנשים קיבלו 100.
גם כן שלו 90 קבוצ. כן, היה אחד שקיבל. ראיתי 94.
רגע, מה היה מבוא נעשה טוב לנצג רגע בפייתון? סימולציה על...
למה זה לא פותח? בוא נעשה בפורק. טכנית אנחנו יכולים לבדוק מה...
לא יודע מה יש לעשות על זה.
יש גם 98.
מכאן היה...
זה לא לקחתי את זה, אתה יכול להעביר את זה 10 דקות.
אנחנו עכשיו אומרים על גם הפרמטר, סקיל פרמטר, מנחים אותה. עוד דקה,
יש לכם
קושי בטבע.
נגיד
איך זה...
מה, אתה רואה את ההסתלקות עצמה?
לא, מה האפליקיישן?
איפה אתה רואה את זה בטבע?
זה 1 חלקי זה מה זה אומר כאילו במתמטיקה.
אפשר גם להגיד על הקופיה של כנסת, משהו כזה.
אין ממוצע
אין ממוצע?
אני שמעתי להיות תקוע במעלית של לילה של
כן, לא, אין ממוצע, אבל שאלה למה, בוא נראה.
אתה לא מוצא להוריד
אפשר
טיפיקבית.
שזה לא מתכנס.
לא, בסדר.
אני היית מעלית
אתה עושה כאילו
כמה לילה במעלית.
לוקח חלק מסוים
לילה
ועושה
כזה.
אינטגרל על
וואי.
ההתפלגות, לדעתי זה מתקדם. זה הסיבה.
נראה את זה גם במצגת.
בטוח אני ניסן.
ככה.
למה?
אני מתנגד לרעיון. לקרוא את זה, יעלה, אתה רק
בשנייה וחצי עשיתי עדכון לפייתון. שאתה אמר לי ששורה לי ראשון.
תנסי על הכל.
תרשמי זה בטרמינל.
לפתוח פייתון.
כן, תפתחי את הפייתון.
היית מעדיף להיות תקוע במעלית.
ואז יש לך את הטרמינל פה למטה. תחיצי עליו.
זה עשה לי packages installed successfully, אבל זה עדיין מראה לי
תרשמי פייתון.
כאילו אני אישית עובד
לא, רגע, מה את רוצה להקשיב? את מה שהיא אמרה? את מה שהיא אמרה?
כן.
אז שם תרשמי PIP
אבל אז הכל כאילו אני עושה דרך כלומר, אין לי אופציה אחרת כאילו, לא הורדתי, לא היה לי כוח כאילו לגבי בוי לזה, כאילו יש לי קצת בוי כאילו. זה ההתפלגות של... לא, יש לי כאילו... יש לי גם לראות על המחשב. במק זה כאילו מובנה לגמרי, יש לי כאילו גישה ללינוקס ישירות. ווינדוס זה כאילו... קצת יותר חמודדנית כאילו.
אני אגיד סיפי שביט, וגם מה זה
עד שאתה מצליח.
הצלחת להוריד.
כל מועד שצריך את זה.
הצלחת להוריד? זה הוריד לי ביוטיפול, ועכשיו זה מראה לי שהוא לא קיים אצלי.
לא יודע, זה כאילו... דברים של תכנות וכאלה פשוט יותר נוח כאילו מילים
אז אולי נחכה שנה שנתיים. אז אולי אבל אני אראה לך... אני צריכה לחזור אבל אני אראה לך.
בווינדוס יש לך פרוססים שרצים, אז כאילו ווינדוס יתקדם על משהו ולינוקס
Do you manage to install? package?
זה לא עובד אבל
מה?
ירד לי וכל פעם הוא עושה אינסטאל פאקט, וכל פעם לא מזהה אותו, אחרי שהוא מסיים לרדת.
עכשיו הוא לא עובד.
לא, אז צריך אחר כך לעשות from BS4 import
from BS4
כשאתה כותב import צריך לעשות from BS4 import beautiful עם בי גדול וסוג אבל זה לא קשור לאיך אתה עושה את הפיפ אינסטל, הוא הצליח לעשות את הפיפ אינסטל?
הוא כותב לי כל שזה ירד וכל הוא לא מזהה.
מה זה לא מזהה? כשאני מנסה לעשות לו אימפורט?
כן.
לא, אז הדרך אחר כך לעשות אימפורט זה כאן. אבל זה עוד מוקדם, אני אראה לכם את זה.
כי עם הריקוד זה לא עושה לי בעיה.
כן. אוקיי, so let's start with the request library. So what does it allow me to do, the request library? It allows me to get information from a website, to post to a website, but it's not the best for parsing the information. So for parsing information, we're going to use this additional package, which is called Beautiful Soup, and there's actually another one that we need to pip install, but when we get there, I will tell you about it. So let's look at an example. Is everybody good with the request package? Not yet? Request with an S. Should be...
Beautiful soup, אני הורדתי את זה, אבל זה עדיין עושה לי שזה...
אז תעשי ככה גם... תרשמי...
No, if you don't manage to import it, it's fine. For the moment. Okay, so let's start with request. Okay. So I'm removing this. Okay, so I'm going to import request. Make sure you manage to do it too. And we're going to start with a URL. Do you remember what happens when we do import anti-gravity? It opened this page, right? Okay, so I'm going to copy the URL from this page. Okay, because it's very good for understanding what request is doing. And then the first request command that I will use is called get. Get URL. Okay, and let's print R and see what we're getting. Okay, so I gave it a URL, and then the get command is returning a response. Okay, so it's not very clear what this response is yet. So maybe you remember I told you about two built-in functions that helps you understand what's going on. One was help and one was dir. Remember? So let's try both of them. So what is dir giving me? Okay, so dir is giving me all this list of attributes, not necessarily super clear, although I have here content, connection, so you see that all of these things seem to be related to internet pages. JSON, do you know what JSON is? It's a lightweighted language that allows us to parse, that is very easy to parse. Status code, text, URL. Okay. So we'll get to this in a second. Let's ask it to help us understanding what it's doing. Okay, so this is a bit clearer. So it's giving us all these details, the content of the response, the text is the content in Unicode, okay, content in bytes too. One of them is the content in bytes. Where is it? Data content. This is the JSON. Okay, I can't see the content in byte, but we'll get to it in a second. Okay, so let's print. So one of the possible functions here is text. Okay, so let's print the text attribute. Okay, so what it's giving me here, the text is, do you know, are you familiar with this?
HTML.
Okay, this is the HTML content of this website. Okay, so if you've never seen HTML, this is what it looks like. Okay, not very friendly to the eye. And we're going to need an HTML parser to convert this into an actual web page. Now let's download an image. Okay, so I'm summarizing. I used the request library to get information about this web page, which has this URL. I wanted to explain what this 200 is. So let's print the status code. Let's first download the image, it will become clearer. So if you go to this website, you see that there is here a permanent link to this comic and image URL. Okay, so I now want to use the request library to download this image. Okay, so let's do it. Here I'm going to okay, first I need second. I'm going to define something called image URL. Okay, which is you should copy paste here the PNG, the link to the image. Okay, and here I'm going to do the same as before, but with the image URL here. Okay, and I'm going to ask it for the contents. Okay, so what do we see here? What is it printing? Do you know what these are?
הביטים של התמונה.
Yes, exactly. So before I was printing the content in Unicode. Now I'm printing the content in bytes. These are the bytes of the picture. Okay? Now, how can I convince myself that I indeed downloaded the picture? We're going to, I think we haven't talked that much about opening files because the moment you're using pandas for data analysis, you're going to make a bit less of use of the way I'm showing here. But here I'm basically opening a file, okay, and I'm going to call it bycache. I'm going to call it comic dot png, and what I'm writing here is that I want to be able to write to this file, okay? And here, okay, I need to open it as F, okay? This is opening a file that I called comic.png, and here I'm going to write to this file the content that I pulled from internet with the request library. Okay, so I'm going to write to this file the content in bytes that I pulled from internet. You're with me? Okay, so let's run it. Okay, and what you see is that a comic PNG file just appeared, which was not there before. Let's open it. Okay, let's go to chain. Let's go to Python. Don't know why it's so slow. Let's do this.
It's right there.
Yes, it's there, but I want to show you that I'm opening it from outside. Okay.
Here it is.
Here it is. Okay. So I wrote the content in bytes to a file, and what it means is that I basically extracted the image from this website.
מעיין, WP, it means that you
So W, it means that you are opening it for writing. B, I'm not.
Bytes.
Maybe it's bytes. Yes. Because if you can also open a file for reading, and then it would be R. So with the open function, you need to specify if you're opening the file for writing or for reading. Okay, so let's summarize. What we did here is that we extracted an image from internet using the request library, and we convinced ourselves that we've managed to download the image, to extract it. Okay. Ken, this is something that we haven't talked about too much. Because A, you will not necessarily use it for data analysis that much if you're using Panta, and B, it's very easy to learn. It's not something that I felt we need to spend a lot of time on, but this is opening a file which I called comic.png, and it's opening it for writing, okay, and then with the command f.write, I basically wrote some content to it.
F זה ה-open משהו הזה.
כן, ככה זה הסינטקס בשביל לפתוח קובץ ולכתוב בתוכו.
נקודה רייט מה זאת?
זה הסינטקס בשביל לפתוח קובץ ולכתוב בתוכו. בסדר? אחת מהאופציות. Okay, now you remember that we had a 200 message? Okay, so I want now to spend a bit of time on this. I'm ask it to print what we called the stages code. So okay, you remember this 200, the answer that we had before? So are you familiar with stages code from web pages? Sometimes you have error 400, 500.
Oh.
You're familiar with this?
Mm-hmm.
So 200 means success. Okay, it's there. 400 it's a client error. 500 it's a server error. And 300, if I remember well, it means you're redirected somewhere. Okay, so 200 means it's there. The page is there, it's a success. So there is a command called OK too that is printing false if it's 400 and beyond, if it's either a client or a server error, but otherwise it will print you true. So let's see that it's working. Okay, it's working. Okay. So this is the very basic of the request library. Again, here the goal is not to give you an entire tutorial on how to use request, but more to give you a taste of all kinds of things that you can do with these specialized libraries. Okay, there is also a way to post things to a web page using a request, but because we don't have a specific URL with a website that we want to post in, it requires us to use some testing API, and we have 10 minutes left, so I want to show you a bit of beautiful soup. Sounds funny. So I found these two cartoons which I think illustrate very well what we mean by web scraping. So web scraping, it means extracting stuff from the web, but then also reusing them, basically, making sure that you can reuse them. So this includes headlines from a website, from a news website, okay? Let's assume that you want to build, I don't know, an algorithm that does some clustering on all the headlines that were in the news of today, okay? Or you want to do some comparison of prices from 10 different websites of online shopping, okay? So how would you do this? You would use a web scraping library to get the prices from all these web pages, and then you will do some data analysis on them. It's pretty amazing how much data is available to all of us, okay, the moment we know how to access and parse it, okay? I don't know, scores of names of people. Really, we could think about thousands of different things you could do with the data that is available online. Okay, and beautiful soup. I don't know. It's on the one hand, it's a funny name, but I think it illustrates well what we're doing. There is a soup, a big soup of all kinds of things, and we're trying to dig from it the specific data that we're interested in. So there is one more thing that you need to pip install, and it's an HTML parser called LXML. So it's one line. You do pip install. Unfortunately, I cannot write to this here, but it's LXML. So can you do it and tell me if it worked for you? LXML.
That's it?
Yes. And now I'm going to show you what kind of cool things you can do with Beautiful Soup. So I'm still going to use the request library, and I'm going to use Beautiful Soup. So the way to import Beautiful Soup is to do from BS4 import Beautiful Soup. Okay, and you also need this HTML parser. Okay. So I looked for the most simple HTML websites that I could think of, just to illustrate for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with HTML. So this is a web page from a guy in CERN. Okay, this is the most basic HTML website. If you came across some very old websites where people didn't do a lot of styling and okay, this is HTML, plain HTML website. Okay, and the reason I'm using it is because it makes it easier to understand what's going on. So I don't know how it works on Windows, but in Mac there is a way to look at the source behind the web page. Do you know this? So show page source. Okay, so this is how the page is written, the underlying codes behind this web page. Okay, so body here is the main body of the page, and you have here all these division, the div, P is usually a paragraph. Okay, this is how HTML looks like, and in our very simple case, it's much simpler. So if I go to develop and show page source, you see it's pretty short, and it's I don't know if I convinced you that it's much simpler than the previous one. Okay, so I'm going to use it, but you can really use any URL when you're trying it. So I'm going to show you an example with this URL. So I'm creating a URL. You can put here any URL you want. Okay, and I'm going to use this soup. I'm going to first use request. So source equal request dot get. Okay, here again you can use any URL you want. Just okay, so this is printing all the HTML, underlying HTML for this page. Okay, and now I want it to look, to start parsing this data. So I'm going to use soup equal beautiful soup source. And this is where you need the HTML parser. Print soup. Okay, it looks pretty similar, but it's going to make it much easier to parse. And to make it more friendly to the eye, there is a function called prettify. It's from pretty, okay, to make more pretty. So prettify, okay, the soup is already defined, so I only need to do this. Okay, and this is, you see that this is making it look like a much more familiar HTML code with the indentation. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to. We have 5 more minutes. I'm going to show you in these 5 minutes how I can extract. Let's assume that I want to make a list of all the videos, the YouTube IDs of the videos on the website. Okay, there is a website of someone that I really value, and I want to make for myself a directory with all the YouTube videos. Okay, so how do I parse the names, the YouTube IDs of this video from the website of this person? So here I'm going to use the videos from this guy whom I told you is doing these really good tutorials. His name is Corey Schaffer. Okay. So I'm asking for the simple for the text of this URL. Okay, so let's see what I'm getting here. Still thinking. What's going on? Okay. So you see that this is the reason I gave the previous example is that this is much more complicated to understand. It has tons and tons of lines because it's a much more modern website, and it's more of a mess. Okay, so you see that if I do a search for YouTube here, YouTube, okay, you see that I have several links to YouTube videos. Okay, now the question is, how do I extract those links? Okay, I managed to extract all the data, all the HTML data from this website. How do I make a list of the YouTube links on this page? Okay, and the way to do this is you see these signs here are basically defining some sections in the HTML structure. I feel that I'm losing everybody. Okay, the HTML file is divided to all kind of sections of different types. Okay, and what Beautiful Soup allows me to do is to dive into some specific parts of this HTML page. So I'm going to do it. You're going to have to trust me, okay? And you can try it also in parallel. And I want to get us to the point that we have a list of the YouTube links. So, okay, so we did source, we did prettify it. Okay, so there is one section in this HTML file which is called article. Okay. I'm going to write it and then I will explain. Actually, article and okay, soup find article. Okay, so soup, Beautiful Soup allows me to dive into some specific section. Which section? The section which is called article in the HTML file. Okay, there is a section called article, and I saw that one of the videos is in this section. So soup, Beautiful Soup is allowing me to dive into this specific section. Okay. Okay, because we have 3 minutes left, I will copy paste the code, explain you what it's doing, and run it. And I will also post it to the Moodle if you want to try it for yourself. Okay, so what am I doing here? This we do it. So prettify. Okay. So we found the article. This I'm going to. This I'm going to remove. Okay, so what I noticed, I would have to take you through the HTML file to convince you, but I noticed that the YouTube videos appear within a section in the HTML file that is called iframe and YouTube player. Okay, and this requires a little bit of familiarity with the HTML structure, but I'm going to show you how it looks in the HTML file. You see that I have this class called iframe and then YouTube player, and then it's giving me the link to the YouTube file. Okay. So this is easy. Once you start playing with HTML, you're going to become familiar. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, you're going to become familiar with it very quickly. So within this iframe class, okay, we extracted the source. This is giving us the oh, come on. Okay, so this is giving us this long link. Okay, now these are embedded links. They are not the actual links. The actual YouTube link, it appears here. Okay, this is a YouTube everything that's before the question mark. This is a YouTube ID of the video. Okay, now you remember the split, I showed you the split function that you can apply to a string, and then you can split a string according. Okay, so what I did here, and I'm going to post it to the Moodle, I've splitted this long string so that it separates the bits that are separated by a question mark. Okay, and I first splitted it according to this dashed, okay, and then I got all these words, and then I did an additional splitting to split it by question marks so that I got this ID. So it sounds very complicated, and it's especially because I don't have time to take you through the gory details of the HTML file. But the point here is that once you've extracted with requests the data from internet, Beautiful Soup allows you pretty easily to dive into some specific sections inside your HTML file, okay, and to extract the information. So here I wanted to give you the example of extracting video IDs, but it could be anything. You could want to extract the 5th character of the text in the 10th paragraph, okay? This is what Beautiful Soup allows you to do. Maybe we'll do an exercise about it in the tutorial so that you get more familiar with it. Okay? אני אבקש מהמתרגלים לעשות איתכם תרגיל קטן של Beautiful Soup, כי אני מרגישה שבגלל איך שנראה HTML לא ממש הספקתי לשכנע שזה נורא מגניב, אז נעשה תרגיל עם זה. זה לא יהיה בשיעורי בית.
זה לא מבחן אולי? זה אולי בית.
בשביל מה השאלה הזו? לא יהיו במבחן דברים שאתם לא יודעים לעשות עם נייר ועיפרון. אל תדאג, יהיה ממש סבבה במבחן.
מעיין, יש איזושהי הגבלה כאילו חומר פתוח למה שאתה רוצה.
כן. Actually, you can tell, add everything that is specialized library, maybe one second. Everything that is specialized library, okay, what we are doing today and next time is not going to be in the exam, okay? I wish you come today and next time because I think machine learning is really good to practice, but it's everything that is specialized library and doesn't belong to the toolkit of stuff that you need to have is not going to be in the exam, okay? היום זה הודיע על object oriented. Object oriented very relevant. Everything we did until object oriented is irrelevant. Inheritance is very relevant.
It's not important in itself. It's important because it's a skill.
Depends what you know to do.
Finding a library that's special.
אתה צודק, יש לך מה לעשות.
סתם להציג באמת של אפשר נגיד לשים כאילו